I want to leave here empty, knowing that everything that I had put my mind to, or any idea that I had conceptualized, I fully allowed myself the space to express that. So yeah, I want to live in the highest version of my self-expression.
Mbali.
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 Mbali. Mbali.
Mbali is an independent business consultant, podcast star, and workplace wellness content creator.
Really knows her stuff around workplace wellness, and she is consulting on it. Mbali Mzinyane really knows her stuff.
Literally blown away by her knowledge, her experience, her insights, and the very calm and contained way that she always speaks.
Clear and stark difference between waiting and being a leader. 17, 18, we really expect you to map out the trajectory of your life and to know what you want to be for the rest of your life, which I think is kind of unreasonable to do when negative behavior is rewarded or negative behavior goes unchecked. It is the source of an unhealthy or a toxic work environment.
And at some point, you realize the past doesn't have to define you. The detours, the setbacks, the closed doors, they are part of the story, your story. And here, we're all about second chances, fresh starts, and those moments that change everything. Welcome to the Breakthrough Sessions podcast, where we talk about the messy, the beautiful, and the in-between. Because every ending is just the beginning of something new. I'm Refilwe, and this is The Rebirth. Let's get into it.
Mbali.
Yes.
Hi.
Hello.
How's it going?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm so excited.
Yes, thank you for having me. It's finally happening.
Right. A couple of months in the
Couple of
making.
months.
Yeah. So we
Yes.
finally got it down.
Yes.
I'm just curious, before we get into it, I'm curious to know what young Mbali was like growing up. So maybe share a little bit about that.
Sure. You're taking me back. I don't know if you've seen on social media, there's a trend that says I took my younger self out for
Yes,
coffee.
I've seen
So
that.
this is similar to
Variation of
that,
that.
in some way. Younger Mbali was very confident, very self-assured. I don't know where she got all of that from, but always believed in her abilities, very active in different ways, academic, sports. I always wanted to see myself in different spaces, and I always believed that I would do my best or be the best in those different spaces. And I think being exposed to like that level of competence in certain areas is what grew my confidence. So one thing I really remember about my younger self is just this unwavering confidence that I really appreciated. I think it's the thing that has like set me up in so many ways. Like I said, a very active child, very curious child, very much in her emotions as well. But I think at the time I didn't know how to express them and to really like own them, and understand that like my sensitivity is actually a superpower. So only when I got older and I was able to reframe what sensitivity is and how it can help me in different spaces, that I was able to really appreciate it. If anything, it's something that I tried hiding. It would probably take offense to, and one would be like, you're so sensitive. But now it's like, thank you. You're saying I'm so sensitive, it means that I'm living in the full experience of my emotions and the full experience of my humanity. And it is a superpower because it's the thing that has helped me with my personal relationships, my work relationships, in terms of having emotional intelligence in the workplace,
Yes.
and navigating those spaces where you're expected to be hard and tough with a lot more softness, and being in tune with the humanness of the environment and within myself. So yeah, long and short of it, that was Mbali as a child.
Mbali had like a full life as a child.
I think so. I think so. I mean, I don't like looking back, at my life as in, those were my glory days or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
I feel like every day is a day of glory for me, and there's always opportunity, and life keeps getting better. But I will say that I really had like a full childhood, very active, like I said, and by active I mean in like sports, academics, in trying out extramural activities, maybe that weren't even part of what I was doing at school. Full of life and a wanting and a willing to express and explore myself. And in hindsight, I mean, like I said, I don't know where that came from, but I'm so appreciative of that, because what you're seeing now is a culmination of all of those experiences, right? And I see that trait being carried through also into my adult life, in the different work that I do, the different spaces that I've been in, and truly living to want to fully express myself. I always say, I mean, I only came up with this now, or recently rather, that, my life's mission is to live in the fullest expression of myself. I want to leave here empty, knowing that everything that I had put my mind to, or any idea that I had conceptualized, I fully allowed myself the space to express that. So yeah, I want to live in the highest version of my self-expression. Yeah,
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's really, really great. So you grew up with your mom, grandmother in Soweto, and what time you go to varsity?
Yes. So yes, I mean, I grew up in a very matriarchal home. My background is that, like, there's a lot of women around me. I think it's also just seeing a lot of women around me just do life.
Yes.
That has contributed to how I move and navigate this world. So there's that. And yeah, it was time to now go to varsity. So interesting fact is that I took some time off after varsity. I mean, after high school. Okay. I took a year off. Gap year, which is very unheard of.
Yeah.
In black families, and especially if you're like first generation, to navigate in certain spaces, there's certain expectations that come with it, right? But I think I was at a crossroads, after matric, not really knowing which direction to take, and I think it is a lot of pressure that we put on young people. 17, 18, we really expect you to map out the trajectory of your life, and to know what you want to be for the rest of your life, which I think is kind of unreasonable, to be honest. You take a couple of iterations before settling into a version of yourself that you are comfortable and confident in.
Totally.
And that's the space that we kind of need to hold for people. But in any case, I took time off, and in that gap year, it was a year for me to really like explore different things, right? So I worked at a fashion boutique. I tried out different things, but at some point I decided, okay, now it's time to obviously decide what the next step is, and that was varsity, because that was expected. And that's when I decided that I initially applied to study biochemistry at the University of Johannesburg, and I thought that I was going to do that because that is what was expected of me, and that's the kind of like course that you would apply to or say to people, and you would get a certain reaction, right? So like, ooh, is that what you're studying? And somewhere along the lines during the application process, I changed my mind, and I was like, I don't want to do this. I want to study journalism.
Yeah.
I am a great communicator, I'm a great writer, and also at the time I was just, enamored by people like Ngao Motsei, who was really young and at the time was the editor of Move, who later became the editor of True Love magazine, enamored by Janine Jellers, who at the time was the editor of, no, she was a features writer for Our magazine, later became the editor of 17 magazine, very young at that stage, you know, and these were women who I feel like I resonated with in how they presented themselves, in the view of their world, and how they articulated and expressed their thoughts and experiences. I was like, that sounds like me. That kind of looks like me too, you know. And so, yeah, I ended up changing my course. I went to the admissions office at UJ while they were processing applications, and I said, I want to change my course. Did not even tell anybody. And so when I went back and I told my mom, she was just dumbfounded, like, what? Yeah. When did this happen? How did this happen? But I'm really glad that I took that path because, again, everything has culminated into this moment. And the reason that I even have the platform that I have, I'm able to express myself in the way that I do, express my ideas, conceptualize ideas, put them in writing, in speech, communicate, and how I present myself, is a result of me making that decision and the exposure that I got throughout varsity, having studied that and having received a number of opportunities as a result of my studies. It all culminated into this moment, Julie, and into who you're seeing today. Yeah.
That's so great, because I'm thinking while you're talking that you had such a sureness of yourself when you were 19, 20 years old. Yes, it came a little bit later because you started somewhere else and you pivoted mid-application. Yeah. And then you stayed true to that and you stayed in that. And now these are like you're reaping the benefits of the decision you made like a couple of years ago. And I'm wondering like how were you so confident and sure that was what you needed to do, that was what you needed to pursue? Yes, you were inspired by other people outside, but how were you brave enough to make that decision?
I can't tell you what it was, honestly. I think it was intuition, it was guidance, and by guidance I mean from like a higher power. Because I don't have anything specific that I would say contributed to that level of surety, right? It was just that this is what I want, this is what I feel like I'm called to do, and I think once I obviously started my studies, there were so many reaffirming moments while I was studying that confirmed that this is the path that you need to be in, you know. I mean, when I talk about opportunities, I mean being selected amongst like I think hundreds of students at the time to be part of a program, an exchange program at Rhodes University, having the opportunity to have traveled abroad through my studies, and I mean those moments of reassurance for me solidified, right, that the decision that I had made was right. Was the right decision. I mean, there were moments of doubt, I won't lie, here and there, and especially because of the expectations, like I said, that had been set up because of the precedents that I had set in my childhood and in my academic journey. I think there may have been an expectation that because this is how you performed previously, this is maybe the kind of career that we would have expected you to take. And I took something that was more creative and explorative, and I know that shocked some people, and in some instances it did cause a little bit of doubt in me here and there. But I always had moments along my journey that just reaffirmed and reassured that this is it. You are where you're supposed to be. You are where you're called to be. I'm obviously expressing it in this way now, in hindsight, but at the time, I think I needed that validation in different ways, and I continued, and I went up to honors level, and spent some time in media, but I think it took me obviously being in that space to realize that maybe this is not it. Maybe my skill set could be useful in a different arena, and that's where I pivoted into the corporate space, into the tech space more specifically, and then I spent majority of my career there. So
let's actually go into your time at the tech space. When you were there, I mean, at the time, I can imagine it was probably predominantly males, maybe not even predominantly males of color, but like white males.
White male environments, definitely. Yeah.
How did you navigate that as a young black girl coming into that space?
No, that was a complete culture shock for me.
Sure.
Complete culture shock. I think there was a lot of just reconciling with the reality and my expectations, right? Because then I felt like I couldn't just only be carried by the fact that I believed in myself. That was not enough, you know.
Yes, yeah.
I wasn't only carried by my self-belief or the fact that I'm a hard worker. I experienced a culture shock because there were other nuances and ways of being and conducting myself in that environment that I was not privy to. You know, never having had exposure to a corporate environment like that, never having had exposure to a white male-dominated environment like that, definitely took me by surprise. You know, I had to learn a lot on the job. I had to, like I said, reconcile with this reality that your hard work and self-belief is not enough, you know. There's a corporate culture that you need to adjust to, certain ways of conducting yourself, certain ways of being, certain ways of presenting yourself in a way that, you know, it's going to position you, in a way that it's also just going to be for your survival. And I think, you know, for the most part in the beginning, I didn't know. I was naive. I was naive, right? And it takes about a good 3 years, 2-3 years for you to be like, actually, this is how things are done here. And maybe this ain't it, or maybe I need to adjust to how things are done. You know? It takes a while for you to acclimatize to that, because in the beginning, it's really just you're driven by that ignorance or naivete, if you want to call it. That's the thing that's fueling you, that, you know, I believe in myself, I'm a hard worker, and this is how I've always achieved results, so maybe this is going to work here. Then you realize that it's actually not working. If anything, it's working against you. And so there's something that I might be missing. Maybe there's something that's not landing. And that's when you realize that there's a different way of navigating this kind of space. Here, you need to understand the code of conduct. Here, you need to understand that it's a different ecosystem, and there's a way of moving in this ecosystem that gets you, you know, seen, that gets you promoted, that gets you the things that you want. And yeah, it doesn't take, you know, it's not something that happens immediately. It kind of takes a bit of trial and error if you don't have the right mentorship, the right coaching, or prior exposure, maybe through job shadowing opportunities or whatever, to be able to understand that kind of environment. So it was a culture shock. It really, really was. It took some time to understand, and then following that took some time to adjust to. Yeah.
I can only imagine, especially coming into that kind of space, how it was for you at the time, and now having to make sense of all of this and realizing the fact that what you thought would have worked at the time is not going to work in this environment, and then having to adjust accordingly as well. It's a lot. And I think corporate is also like that, or the workplace rather is like that, when you're coming from like a varsity type of environment, going into a new environment, and it's a shock. And then on top of that, it's people that you don't see around that look like you.
That's it.
And then it's an adjustment to that. It's just a lot.
It's a lot. It's definitely a lot. It's compounded, right?
Yeah.
At a social level, understanding social dynamics. At a racial level, understanding how that affects the social dynamics. At a professional level, and how you get work done. That it's not always the one who works the hardest that's going to get recognized. It's the one who's the most strategic. Right. And by being strategic, it's about how do you position yourself, who do you talk to, how do you show up in meetings, what do you say when you're in meetings, your relationship with your manager. How do you navigate that? Do you have a manager that is vouching for you? Do you have a manager who doesn't care, or a manager who wants to sabotage you? Those are all the things that can really contribute to your work experience, that can either set you up or can really just be a downfall, right? And like I said, it does take a lot of adjusting to it, especially if you have no prior experience or prior knowledge of that kind of environment. What I do like about I guess this generation, this phase of social media content creation specifically, is that a lot of people are speaking up about their workplace experiences, right? Yeah. And for me, that is a form of education and a form of awareness, so that a new graduate fresh out of varsity entering the workplace can go into it with a little bit of awareness and an understanding of what they're getting themselves into, versus where I was started. When I started my corporate journey, I didn't have resources or people to look around and get this kind of guidance from or insight about their experiences. And so yeah, it's really good to see that a lot more people are speaking openly about their experiences, because it is a form of awareness and education for others. Yeah.
Do you think the lack at the time was the reason that you created Wellness in the Workplace?
Of course. Definitely is. I mean, Wellness in the Workplace is the platform that I wish I had when I started, to be honest. That is, it's a platform that I feel that as a 22, 23-year-old starting out, I would have had, because a lot of the experiences, that I share on there with my guests, or explore with my guests, is based on, personal experience, either from the guest or from myself, right? Yeah. I always say that, Wellness in the Workplace was, conceptualized because of my own workplace experience, my experience with workplace bullying. And at the time, again, I did not know I was being bullied in the workplace. I really thought that my manager was somebody who was difficult, somebody who was precise, wanted things a certain way, somebody that, had a different kind of personality, and I needed to adjust to that, only to realize, down the line that, no, this person is a bully. This person is a bully, and typically in the workplace context, bullying is hidden behind people's style of management, or it's mistaken for leadership, which is really not the case, because there's a clear and stark difference between bullying and being led or being managed. And so, if I had a platform like Wellness in the Workplace, I think I would have known that that is what I was going through. It took me doing my own research, going out of my way to figure out what was happening in order for me to label and name my experience. So yeah, it definitely did contribute. My personal experiences rather contributed to the conceptualization of Wellness in the Workplace.
I wanted to take a step back for our viewers and listeners. Maybe if you can break down the type of resources and offerings that Wellness in the Workplace offers, and what it's about.
What is it? Let's start there. Yeah. So Wellness in the Workplace is a platform that's dedicated to equipping new and experienced professionals with tools and insights on how to navigate challenging workplace dynamics. Initially, the platform was formed as a podcast, where in a similar setup, my host interviewing a guest about a specific topic that's workplace related. So a very workplace-centered type of content. We're talking about toxic work environments, workplace bullying, talking about managing upwards, we're talking about, things like how do I search for a job, or how do I leave my job on a good note. Whatever the case is, it's really just about empowering new and experienced, more specifically new professionals, with content that is insightful and that empowers them to show up differently within the workplace. So that's what it is, or that was the formation when we started. But in the last year, it has really just grown in terms of just the offering. So currently, the platform, I don't call it a podcast, it's now a platform, is going to just offer employee wellness services to corporates and also to individuals. So through workplace wellness talks, advisory services, team building initiatives, etc., that I've had the fortune of facilitating, for a couple of corporate companies, and at an individual level, now branching into one-on-one coaching for career development or career planning, and yeah, it's grown to be a full service offering where the podcast is really more around the content creation aspect of it, and then on the other side there is a full service bouquet of services offered to organizations as well as individuals. For organizations, it's mainly organizations that prioritize workplace wellness and organizations that want to create a sustainable and a healthy workforce. And at an individual level, it's about self-empowerment. How do I empower myself with the right coaching, from an experienced professional, so that I show up differently within the workplace, so I navigate that space differently. And I mean, thinking about it right now, it's also for an individual who's probably been listening to the podcast for a really long time, but now is seeking that one-on-one kind of engagement from the likes of myself in terms of just getting more insight and guidance, with regards to their career. So, yeah.
I'm so curious, and I want to look at it in the lens of two phases, right? There's the individual, and then there's the business. So, if we're looking at the business, how do you approach them with your offerings, or is it that they reach out? The reason why I'm asking that is I'm wondering, if you were to reach out to them, do you face any kind of backlash or stonewalling? Because yes, wellness is important, but they also want their profits. They want to make money. They don't really want the employees to focus on, meditation or a yoga or a session on how well-being is good for you. They want them to do their work. So I'm just wondering, from a business sense, do you face any kind of difficulty when working with businesses with regards to the kind of wellness that you want to maybe impose or teach or bring to the employees?
So firstly, I want to start off by saying that the two are not mutually exclusive, right? Wellness and making profits. You don't have to sacrifice the one over the other. The two can coexist. And I think the misconception is that if there is a focus on wellness, that's going to affect profitability. When in actual fact, if there is a focus on wellness, it's going to contribute to productivity, and productivity leads to better performance, and performance leads to profitability. So that's literally the equation, right? And I think for organizations that value that and that are able to connect that link and are able to understand the different variables of that equation, they're able to see value in conversations around employee wellness. They're able to see value in initiatives that support that. And mind you, wellness is not just about meditation. Wellness is not just about having a dedicated mental health day or yoga session. It is cultural. It is embedded in the culture of an organization. And if an organization wants to prioritize it, then they need to question what kind of culture it is that they have, and how it is that they can include a narrative around employee wellness to ensure that they have a sustainable workforce. So the conversation is always about what is the bigger picture. The conversation is always around what are you trying to get to, and how can you optimize your employees to be able to get to that. And optimization of employees is not only just about their skill set, it's also about considering their well-being. So that's the conversation that needs to be had, and that's the conversation that I have. And so, organizations that prioritize that, they see value in what I do,
in your work,
in my work, and that's where the synergy is. I always say that it's a shared responsibility between the organization and the individual, right? Shared responsibility in the sense that the individual is responsible for ensuring that they are well, they're taking care of themselves, they go into the gym, they are eating well, they are sleeping well, they are noticing when they're not doing okay, and are able to seek out the right resources to help them to deal with whatever it is that they're going through. But equally so, from an organizational standpoint, it is important that the organization creates a space and a culture and facilitates an environment that allows people to engage in self-helping or help-seeking behaviors, and to also just destigmatize seeking help when you are not doing okay. And so there's always that, dance between the individual needs to show up and do their part, but also the organization is responsible for creating a space and an environment that allows for individuals to then engage in those help-seeking behaviors, specifically when it comes to their well-being, mental health, etc. So yeah.
I'm so glad that you answered it like that, because I actually framed my question purposefully the way that I did to highlight how certain corporate would think mental health solutions like a yoga, wellness walk, etc. is enough. But I'm hearing through what you're saying is it's a combination, right? It's a combination of, we understand that they're here to do a job. They have to do the job, obviously. But if they're not well enough to do the job, then the job is either going to fall by the wayside, it's not going to be done, everyone's going to suffer in the process. So how do we mesh wellness with them doing their jobs to ensure that the person is in a good state of mind to be able to do the job? And it's not just through a talk every other day or a wellness day like you mentioned or a retreat or whatever. It takes more, I guess, hands-on approach and more of a customization towards the needs of the business, the needs of the employees, and then offering that so it's tailor-made to them. And I think that's how you'll be able to see results based. So that's good. It's really, really good. And it's really admirable also, because I think it's necessary work that needs to get done.
No, definitely. I mean, you do see some organizations try their hand at employee wellness, with the likes of EAP services, so the employment assistance programs, which I think are valuable. This is then, about creating a culture that destigmatizes that, right? Because it's like, if you have the service, but people are not engaging or are not engaging enough with the service, then what is it about the environment that is contributing to them not engaging? If there may be some form of stigma around people who seek out help when it comes to those services that are being offered, is it a matter of people's reputation potentially being on the line, for example, if they seek out those services because maybe the information that is being shared, by those counselors, for example, is not confidential or private. Is there a culture of trust around that? So, you do see some organizations really try in that regard. But then if the services are being underutilized, then it's a question of what is the culture and the stigma around the use of these services. Because they're there to help our employees, they're there to help optimize and get the best, not the most, but the best out of our employees.
There's a term in internal audit called tone at the top.
Tone at the top. No, I'm curious to know what that is.
Yeah, so tone at the top is the person in the highest authority determines the culture. And then it trickles down to even the lowest employee
I love that.
on the ground.
Tone at the top.
Yes. So if the tone at the top is negative,
of course,
then odds are the culture is going to be negative. If the tone at the top is positive, then that inspires positivity in the environment.
Yeah.
Because their managers are less stressed, middle management is less stressed, and then when they're less stressed, then they're able to help and lead the juniors at a more holistic and at peace mindset. And then obviously the entry-level employees and junior staff are in a better space, knowing that, you know, they're protected, they're covered, they've got trust, they know who to go to for what. And that just brings the whole culture into a positive light. So, yeah, I think tone at the top is really where it's at, especially when it comes to culture.
100%.
Because there's only so much that even an entry-level employee can do to improve upon the culture and the environment. And I actually saw this quote probably like last year, and it said that you as an individual don't have the power to change a culture. Odds are the culture will probably change you. So genuinely for me, that was like a big revelation that no one person can improve upon a culture. I'm not saying that, you know, people as a collective cannot change it, because that's a different story. But because culture is embedded at the top, it makes it a bit trickier to try and fix at the bottom, especially if it feels like you're fighting the fight on your own. So I'm wondering, for people who are still in those kinds of mindsets, those kinds of cultures where the environment is toxic or it's not conducive to their mental health or to them as an individual, and they're not able to leave that environment for whatever reason, whether they've got responsibilities, children, marriage, they can't find another job, whatever the reason might be. What kind of advice do you normally give those people? Like, how do you guide them? Especially the ones that are stuck and they can't really see an out. How do you kind of guide them through that journey?
So firstly, they're not stuck. It is conditional. It's not permanent. I think that's one thing that you just need to reframe. It's very important to have a very positive outlook, despite, you know, what a person might be experiencing. That it is just conditional. It is temporary. That your circumstances can change, and you do have it in you to change those circumstances, i.e., by leaving or finding a job. But that's just a mindset part of it. I think practically speaking, it is just about knowing where you are starting and knowing where you're stopping, right? So self-preservation is very key in that sense. If you're dealing with a toxic boss or an unhealthy culture, set very clear boundaries in terms of what you are able to engage with and what you're not. Because if you overextend yourself out of a desperation because you feel like, if I don't do this, I'm going to lose my job, that's where you self-sacrifice. And when you self-sacrifice, you deplete. And when you deplete, it affects your mental well-being and emotional well-being and physical well-being. And you potentially could hit a state of burnout, right? So all these things are linked. All of these things are linked. And so when you are aware, firstly, of the environment that you're in and that you have to navigate, the first thing to do is to self-preserve, especially if it is an unhealthy environment. That self-preservation is so key. So if I am here at 9 and I have to leave at 5, let that be it. And during that period, you are doing what you need to do in terms of your deliverables, in terms of your performance, in terms of just also engaging the relevant stakeholders in a way that you need to, so that it can never come back to the fact that you are not performing, right? Because the first area that a bully or a toxic boss or whatever will attack is your performance, especially if, objectively speaking, maybe you have dropped the ball, maybe you have missed a deadline, because we are human, we can do that. That is the thing that they will attack first. That is the thing that can set you up negatively. And so the first thing I think you really have to do if you find yourself in that situation is, how do I self-preserve, i.e. take care of myself, so that I can do the work that I need to do given the time that I need to do it. So I'm following all the basic, rules and code of conduct. I'm coming in at 9, clocking at 5. I take my lunch break. For exactly an hour. Respond to emails timelessly. I give feedback when I have roadblocks along the way. I am completing my projects and my tasks on time, so that on paper, objectively speaking, you're doing everything that you're supposed to do. And sometimes that is all that is needed and that is within your control. And so I always just encourage people to just focus on the basics, get the basics right, and do those basics so that at least you're protected at that level, And then socially, it's also another thing to question if, the unhealthy nature or toxicity of that environment is specific to your team, to your department, or within the organization, right? If it's specific to the team or department, then it's also just about looking around to see, are there opportunities to potentially move to a different department? Or is there a mentor or a coach or a sponsor I can find from a different department that can, support me during this period? Somebody that I can at least engage with at a professional level to get guidance about my experiences, right? And whatever challenges it is that I'm experiencing. Because sometimes, when you do get an outsider's perspective, but an outsider who has enough context about what is happening, they can at least give you a bit of guidance. They can at least give you some insights in terms of, this is how things are done here, right? And if you want to navigate the situation in a better way, in a self-preserving way, a sustainable way, in a way that's going to protect you and guard you, this is how you should actually look at it, people that can also just help you understand if there are certain, processes or procedures that you can explore while you're going through that situation, especially if it is severe, right? Let's say it's affecting the quality of your work because it's just gotten so bad. And you have evidence, you have record of, information, or whatever the case is, or instances where your boss maybe did not support you, maybe did not, give you enough guidance, or may have sabotaged you by giving you, too much work within a short space of time, or not giving you enough resources to be able to complete a task. If you have that kind of evidence and you can build up a case, it's also just about finding out how else can I manage the situation in a way that can protect me. And so it's really just about taking a step back to evaluate what is actually happening, and then positioning yourself in a way that will allow you to navigate that better and to approach it again in a self-preserving way, and in a way that at least at the basic level you're able to protect yourself and you're able to build up enough, evidence or a case if need be, should you be in a position to engage HR at a different level.
Sound advice. Really, really sound advice. I want to talk about psychological safety.
Ooh, my fave. The latest buzzword, actually.
Yes.
When it comes to workplace wellness. Yeah.
Do you believe psychological safety can exist in a workplace? Let's start there.
Definitely. Psychological side. What does it look like? Firstly, what is it, right?
Yes.
Psychological safety is about creating an environment where there is trust, where employees are encouraged to show up as themselves, where there's a culture of feedback, and there's a culture of integrity and transparency, right? So it is really just speaking to different elements within that environment that makes an individual feel safe, feel seen, feel heard, feel valued, feel considered, right? And it's not also a once-off thing. It is something that is reinforced through different initiatives, through behaviors, through attitudes, through language, through sometimes I would even go as far as saying sanctioning, right? So if you have individuals within a team who are not behaving in accordance to the values of the team, there's repercussions because that is not how we do things, right? And usually in cultures where individuals who don't behave accordingly and are left to continue their behaviors, it reinforces a different message, and it takes away then from the safety that one might try to create within that environment. So psychological safety really, like I said, speaks to individuals feeling safe, seen, heard, considered, valued within an environment. And so it is possible. It has been done before. I was actually listening to a YouTube video recently where, this organizational psychologist, industrial psychologist, and business coach was talking about a case study at Ford Motors where, the first CEO who wasn't Ford, whose surname wasn't Ford, decided to create a culture of psychological safety in order to help the company improve their performance and ultimately their profitability. And one of the things that he did, in a press conference, as a means to try and create that kind of safety and openness and transparency, was when one of the journalists was asking him, "So what car do you drive?" And this guy was like, "Oh, I drive a Lexus," and he works for Ford. And what he was doing essentially by saying that is that we're actually not the best right now in the market, and I want us to get to be the best. And by being open about that, to the extent that I'm even conceding that I'm not even driving a Ford, means that we have some work to do. And that creates what, again, the openness, transparency, and for someone to show up authentically and as openly and as honestly as possible. So I'm quoting that because based on that case study and what that organizational psychologist was talking to, was that psychological safety even comes in moments like that, right? Where people can admit that, guys, we're not the best. Yes. And also, I'm going to be honest enough and say I have associated myself with the best, and we can work at trying to get to be the best. But right now, that's not where we are, And so it's that reinforcement again, also in moments like that, where people can feel safe enough to show up as honestly and as openly as their true and authentic selves. So yes, psychological safety is possible, is achievable, and it can drive results and performance and productivity and profitability for a business.
I always think that once you reach a point where the environment is psychologically safe, then it's like a gold mine. Like it's
definitely. I mean, that's literally what we're talking about when we say a healthy work environment, right?
Of course, yeah.
If we can highlight what a toxic work environment is and what an unhealthy work environment is, what is the opposite of that? It's an environment where people feel psychologically safe.
True.
It's an environment where people, again, they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel valued, considered, respected, and also recognized for their efforts. So,
What do you think the root cause of a toxic environment is? Toxic work environment is?
Jeez, I think it's really about rewarding negative behavior more than anything, or letting negative behavior go unchecked. Because once that is done with one individual or with one act, another individual can do that, or the same individual can do another thing and another thing and another thing. And what did that do? It creates a certain behavior. Then the behavior leads to a general attitude or disposition. then that leads to this is how we do things around here, right?
Yeah.
And especially if individuals that engage in that negative behavior are left unchecked, then what it communicates to everybody else is that that's okay. I can do that too. That's a value of ours, or something that we don't. We're okay with, exactly.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think the root cause of it for me, in my perspective, really, is that when negative behavior is rewarded or negative behavior goes unchecked, it is the source of an unhealthy or a toxic work environment.
Sure. Valid. Really, really valid. Earlier you mentioned workplace bullying and the workplace bullying that you experienced. And as you're talking, I'm like, workplace bullying doesn't look the same in every environment. When we think just of the term bully, we think of someone, high school, for example, who gives someone a wedgie or shoves them into a locker, or what we think we see. And then there's obviously the more deeper types of bullying now that we also see, or maybe not say more deeper, more so there are also other levels of bullying now. We see it online, kids now face it online, where people who don't like you would create a page about how much they don't like you. Or true story, by the way, I've heard of a friend, I think sister, where that happened. Yeah. Or it's very undercover. So in the workplace, the type of bullying that you have seen in corporate environments, is it more of the overt, in your face kind of bullying, or is it more of the passive, aggressive, psychological type of?
I'll speak from my experience, right? I don't think I have gotten to a level with the work that I do that I've engaged with enough corporates to be able to give like a general answer like that. So personal experience, either I have experienced it myself or have observed somebody go through that, and I was in proximity with them. I think it's both, right? So you have overt bullying, you have covert bullying, and one person who really speaks a lot about it based on research is Dr. Ngao Motsei, who is a workplace bullying practitioner who I've had the privilege of having her on my podcast a couple of times actually, and have engaged with her offline. And she speaks about the different types of bullying, right? So overt, covert, it could be peer-to-peer bullying, it could be upward bullying, it could be downward bullying, and she even, has a book called Workplace Bullying and Building Psychologically Safe Work Environments, where she goes into detail about this, right? So you've highlighted the overt bullying, where everybody can see this person walks around reprimanding people, making demands, or embarrassing, publicly humiliating their subordinates. Typically, you'd see that with the leader doing that, with the subordinates essentially, or a manager. Then you also get the covert. The covert is more, the gaslighting, more of the subliminal, passive, aggressive type of engagement, where you can't really put your finger on it, but you realize that there's something wrong. And it could come in certain, phrases, or it could come in different instances where maybe publicly this individual presents themselves as, this kind, compassionate manager, and in one-on-one engagements, that's where you see a different side of them. And that could be quite jarring for somebody on the receiving end of that, right? And then there's, peer-to-peer bullying. So because maybe an individual is associated with a leader, for example, maybe they have a good relationship with the departmental manager or departmental head, because they play golf on the weekend, or they've been in the company the longest, whatever the case is, then they feel like their proximity to the leader gives them leverage in terms of how then they can engage with their peers. And because of that, they then, enforce some form of bullying behavior, because they know that they are protected by the higher ups, right? In the similar sense with downward bullying, where it could be a manager being bullied by a subordinate. The difference here is that the subordinate has a relationship with people, in the higher ups, or has been in the company much longer, and because of that, it gives them again some form of leverage. And maybe the manager is an external hire who's just come in from the outside and has been tasked to lead a team, and because of them being new in this environment and in this situation, they don't have as much leverage, and credibility. And so it's in so many ways and in so many instances that you really kind of put a blanket approach in terms of what workplace bullying is. So yes, you will see the overt, the covert, and the different levels, I guess. But definitely a great resource for people to read or to find out more about is Dr. Ngao Motsei's book, Workplace Bullying, Building Psychologically Safe Work Environments.
Well, that's good. I'll also plug it in the description for everyone to access. Yeah. I want to close off this topic, but I just want to ask, how does a person know when they need to reach out for help?
Sure.
Yeah.
When you are no longer functional, right? When it is a task to do your basic tasks, when you feel the weight and the heaviness of waking up in the morning, going to the office, the anxiety that comes with that, the anxiety that comes on a Sunday night, the anxiety that comes on your drive to work, when you start panicking about, meetings or a team's message coming up, and you hear the sound and it triggers you. That's typically how you know. It shouldn't get to a point where you're hospitalized or you are incapacitated in some way. It shouldn't get to that point. It's just those little things along the way, rumble in your stomach because of anxiety when you're about to step into a meeting with a specific individual.
Yeah.
And when you also feel like in having to speak up or speak against specific individuals can put you in a negative light. I think that's usually a call, because you should be able to engage, a manager or a peer in a way where you don't feel like there would be repercussions to speaking up, right? Obviously, you have to be tactful in how you do it, time, place for everything. Consider that, but the act of speaking up shouldn't be the thing that gets you into trouble. I think the how could get you into trouble. Understandably so. Speaking up, I don't think so.
I have a friend who taught me this concept of ringing your alarm, and knowing that you need to ring your alarm early enough for people to help you.
Sure.
Don't cripple other people of the ability to help you.
Sure,
Don't ring
sure.
your alarm
100%.
early enough.
100%.
So I genuinely think it comes down to that.
100%. And also, you're not weak, right? By doing this. I think a lot of people shy away from seeking out help.
Yeah.
Because again of the perception or the stigma around seeking help.
Yeah.
And help could mean anything. It could be help to say, please can you support me on this project. It could be help where you're engaging a counselor, a psychologist, a therapist. It could be help in just saying, I realize that I don't have a great relationship with this individual, my team member who has a better relationship. Do you mind maybe engaging them from this angle or from this perspective? And obviously in those situations, you need to have both the rapport and the trust to be able to reach out to do that. But try it, right? Test it before you assume that the outcome will be that you'll be perceived in a different way.
True.
Right? Yeah. Test it. Test it.
got nothing to lose in the greater scheme of things, and you're protecting yourself, like you said, that self-preservation thing as well. That's how you move closer to self.
100%. 100%.
It's also what I believe in. What worked for me is like having people. Doesn't need to be, and when I say people, I mean people in the workplace, your people that you can go to with regards to anything, stress, anxiety, whatever it may be, to hold you down. Because I can imagine it's quite a lonely road to be walking that kind of environment, you know, on your own. So I think that also
allies.
Allies in the workplace. This topic is heavy.
It's very heavy.
So heavy. But I'm grateful that we were able to unpack it like really deeply. I think it's important for more people to be able to learn from these kinds of conversations. So I'm grateful for that. Mbali, we have a closing tradition.
Okay.
Where we play a game. It's called We're Not Really Strangers. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I've heard of it.
You've heard of it.
Yes.
Oh, great. So we're going to go through the rounds. I'm going to explain how it works. We're going to go through the rounds and then we'll get to know each other a little bit more.
And you won't really be strangers.
Exactly. Okay, so it says We're Not Really Strangers is a purpose-driven card game. 3 carefully crafted levels that allow you to deepen your existing relationships and create new ones. So the first level is perception. Do you know how others see you? Level 1 is about gaining perspective on what first impressions we give off and challenging the assumptions we make about each other. Okay. Then we have level 2, which is connection. So who are you really? This round is about asking the really asked questions and connecting on a deeper level. And finally, we have level 3, which is reflection. Time to reflect on your game experience. And then we also have some surprise cards. So we have a dig deeper card.
Oh, wow.
And that can be used once per level. And this is meant to encourage transparency if you feel like your partner is holding back. And then we have wild cards. So a wild card, if you draw a wild card, your partner must complete the instructions unless otherwise stated. These are meant to encourage spontaneity and can also encourage silliness. These cards can appear at any moment during the game. Okay. So since you are my guest, I'm going to ask you to ask me the question.
Okay.
They are numbered 1 through 3. We're going to start with level 1.
Okay.
Which is perception.
3 levels.
Yes. So we'll you'll ask and then come to me. Then I'll ask and then we'll go to the second one, the third one, etc.
Okay. I think this would take us having spent a bit more time together. But anyway, do you think I'm usually early on time or late to events? Explain. Perception.
Yeah, it's a perception. So I'm just guessing, right? I genuinely think that you're early. No, actually, I think you're on time. If you are early, it's a couple of minutes early. Reason being, you have to commit to a lot of appointments, podcast appointments. You also have to be ready for people coming onto your podcast show. So you have to be, prepared for that. You go for webinars, and that's where I actually discovered you. And I would think that would require also a level of earliness. So I would think that also is like something that you picked up and get used to. Yes, it's not. I don't think you'd arrive like 30 minutes early.
Yeah.
I think you'd arrive like just before or like on time.
Yeah.
I think it's rare for you to be late. I mean, today excluded. That's why I'm like, no. I think it's more
perception. I love that. Okay.
I think you're early, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do I get to?
You can.
Prove or disprove?
You can. Yes.
So I think it's twofold, and I mean, for anyone who knows me personally, or on a personal level, I apologize sincerely because it's going to come across in a weird way.
Okay.
I think for professional engagements, I'm always on time. Always on time.
Love.
For personal engagements, I don't know why there's a bit of a gray area there. I honestly don't know.
Tricky.
You either get early or you get late.
Sure.
You never get on time.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I need to work on that. I'm in a different season in my life right now. And I think it is forcing me to plan ahead because of the responsibility and the weight that comes with that. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
So sincerely apologize, everybody, and if you're on a personal level, because they will attest that I have either been early or have been late. I've never been on time.
I admire the honesty.
Yeah. But for professional engagements, I mean,
you gotta be.
I have to be.
Yeah.
I have to be. My reputation is on.
Valid. Okay. I will ask you
A perception about you.
let's see. Sometimes, yeah, it will probably be about me though. Okay. As a child, what do you think I wanted to be?
I feel like you grew up to be who. No, let me take that back. I think you probably wanted to do something creative, and you probably doing that right now, given the space that you're in. But you went to do something that was safer, and something that was deemed to be more reputable or respected.
Very right about the creativity thing. When I grew up, I love all things creative, like genuinely. I'm gonna toot my horn here, but all things creative. I draw, play the guitar, my podcast, of course, and I actually recently took up DIY. So yeah, I've been doing DIYing for close to a year. Maybe a little bit less. Yeah, actually, it will be a year in March. Yeah, I DIYed some of the things that are actually in this room.
Sure.
And I'm proud of that. It's something that I enjoy. So it's an element of creativity that I also now do as well. But I'm also really big on. I'm a multi-passionate person. So I do have a financial background, and I love that as well. There's a part of me that also loves that element. So it's the creativity, it's the financial element. I think I'm just a curious person. I love to learn new things. Yeah, and whatever sort of catches my attention, I want to learn more about. So yeah, it's definitely rooted, I think, in both analytical and then the creative side as well. So you were there.
Okay.
You were there, definitely. So I'm glad that the creativity, yes, because that is where I operate from. Genuinely.
Yeah. I love that.
Okay. Over to you. Connection number 2. Yes.
Okay. Are we doing all 3?
Yes.
Okay. Sure. What is a compliment you wish you received more frequently?
That is deep. I would say that I'm on the right track. Yeah, that I'm doing the best that I can. I know people do tell me that, and it's nice to hear. But I think, in the space that I'm in now, where I'm still in between jobs and trying to figure out, what's next and where I see myself, it's nice to get that sort of encouragement and that pat on the back and that reassurance that I'm actually on the right track. I mean, I get that from certain people, but even from God, I would love to get that assurance as well, because sometimes it is a bit difficult. Some days are better than others. So I definitely would want more of that reassurance. But then obviously also by way of compliments and everything, I think that's what I need in where I'm at now in my life. So yeah. Okay, let's see what we are going to get for you. Okay, it's a wild card. I don't think we're going to be able to do this one. Both players write the 3 most important things in life to you.
Yeah. Okay, let's choose another.
Let's choose another one. I agree. Okay, cool. If you could get to know someone in your life on a deeper level, who would it be and why?
Oh, wow.
Sure. Number 2 is always so tricky.
Do they have to be alive?
No, I don't think so.
My grand.
Really?
I would have loved to know her as my adult version. I think my point of relation to her until her passing was very much motherly, nurturing figure. So she was always doing the caring. And I think as my adult self, I would have liked to get to know her as a woman, what some of her dreams were, some of her aspirations. I would have liked to know what makes her tick. Also just some of the trauma that she experienced and how that affected her view of the world and her view of herself. So yeah, I would have liked to know her on a deeper level. Yeah.
There's something so poetic, I think, of getting to know the people who raised you when you are now an adult.
Yes.
It's such a different relationship.
That's it.
And for me, I think I'm thinking about my parents now. I don't know if it was something that I expected. It was kind of just like, I can even pinpoint the moment where like my mom became my friend, you know, and like she started to see me kind of on that level, and even like the moments where they actually like start to take your advice.
Yes.
You are able to have the mature conversation. They can confide in you.
Yeah.
They can share their truths with you. It's such a beautiful thing. And when you reach adulthood, you start to realize why they made some of the decisions that they made growing up, where it came from, the type of people that they were, and also understanding that before they had you, they had a whole life. They lived that, like they experienced whatever they needed to experience, and then they had you. So we've only ever known them as a parent, but there are all these other branches that they're also a part of, and that they were before we came in.
100%.
And now obviously we see that better. So I wish that could have happened for you as well.
Yeah.
Incredible.
It's okay. Yeah.
Sure. Level 3.
Level 3.
Yes.
Okay.
Reflection.
Oh, yeah. Why do you think we met?
Oh my gosh. I can give kind of the realistic context in terms of how I discovered you, but then I'll also give a deeper meaning, right? So from how I discovered you, I actually watched a webinar for, it was a youth webinar. It was all for youth.
Yeah.
Yes, all for youth. And you were one of the panel speakers. I was there, and I resonated with your work. But also, more importantly, I resonated with how you exude your work. Maybe that's what really got me. Funnily enough, when I choose my podcast guests, I don't go on like research who's the best wellness speaker in the country or whatever. I gravitate towards energy.
Sure.
So if I stumble on my guests, ever since I've been doing this, I stumble on my guests, and then I'm like, this person would be great for the podcast, and then that's how I reach out, right? And then I do all the like research behind the scenes and everything to get to know you guys on a deeper level. So with you, it was the same thing. It was just you stood out to me in terms of the kinds of work that you do, but also how you exude it and how you show your passion. It's so it's necessary. I don't know how best to explain it. Like it's enough, So I loved that, and for me it was like, even if we didn't meet in that context, we were gonna meet somehow.
Sure.
So that's that.
Okay. I love that.
Okay. Now it's time for you.
I hope I don't have a wild card.
Let's see.
Not a wild card.
Not a wild card. What parts of yourself do you see in me?
Ooh. Whoa.
Okay.
Sure. Interesting. The creativity. I definitely see that.
Yeah.
The ability to take personal experience and tell stories using that. I can see that. Your sensitivity. I can see that.
Yes.
And I would also say your drive. I'd also say your drive. I think speaking of energies, there's definitely that energy of just being driven and a force that you can identify just by like interacting with you. So yes, I would say that.
I love that. Thank you so much for saying that.
And I think you like the color purple. That's my favorite color.
Isn't it? Purple is one of the faves. I actually don't have like a specific favorite.
Okay, I'll take
Yeah,
that. I'll
yeah.
take that.
For some reason, I gravitate towards teal as well. So people can't see, but like there's a lot of like touches of teal in my space as well. But purple is also high up there.
Okay,
but it's a unique color.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
I'll take that.
Maybe that's also what brought us closer as well.
Maybe.
The color.
Yes.
Mbali, this has been great.
Thank you so much. Also, kudos to you for doing this. I mean, driving this basically on your own, start to finish, production, research, coordination. It's a lot of work, and so it's something to just commend yourself on. And yeah, just the leap of faith, I guess, you've taken with this journey. Yeah, something to be proud of.
Thank you so much. I'm just so excited about my podcast and seeing the future also. And I'm grateful for all of you who have faith in me to come and share your story. It means the world, and I can't wait for our viewers and listeners to just see this episode. I think it's going to be great, and I think it's going to help a lot of people.
I hope so.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that's a wrap on today's session. Remember, breakthroughs don't happen all at once. They unfold in the moments we choose to keep going, to start again, to believe that more is possible. If this episode spoke to you, share it with someone who needs a reminder that their story isn't over. And as you go, keep rising, keep pushing, and most of all, keep believing. This is the Breakthrough Sessions podcast, where every ending is just a new beginning. Until next time.